Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a final discussion regarding Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. Over the course of the past few months, we've been watching every episode of the series in narrative order as opposed to broadcast order because the DVD set, which has the episodes rearranged to form a more tightly knit story to provide extra continuity. Of course, that kind of got exposed a little bit with there being not one but two clip shows, but I digress. So essentially, what I am going to be doing, just a freeform discussion of it, the things that we liked, the things that we didn't like, and just an overall evaluation of the show itself. Now, let's start with the obvious here. Is Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation a bad television show? No, it's not. It's not a bad show. It's taking into account a number of the production choices that were made. I would dare say that the show is probably, if I was to grade it, like maybe a C plus. It's kind of like average to just above average, to put it simply. There was clearly a lot of potential to be had, but the sure there was only we only have 26 episodes to go on. Again, two were clip shows. Five were dedicated to the opening story arc, East meets West. Four were for the four-parter Unchain My Heart, and then every other episode was a standalone individual adventure. Um, where, but within that variety of content, there is enough there to say where the show's strength lied. And when the writers, the story supervisors, and such kept things tight and focused, not trying to cram in too much, um, or having an opportunity to let stories breathe and let moments develop to have like proper payoffs. The show was at its strongest. Again, the two multi-part story arcs is where Next Mutation flat out shines. East meets West. It has to accomplish a number of things within 5 episodes. Right off the shredder, introduce the Dragon Lord in the rank. Uh, introduce Venus. Have a plot where Splinter is kidnapped, then rescued, and has to recover from, essentially have his spirit. now he wasn't kidnapped. His soul gets trapped in the dream realm, dragon realm, however it is which to call it. I don't remember the exact turn of phrase. That was a few months ago when I watched those episodes. But the fact that they had to accomplish so much, but they have 5 episodes to work with to establish every single to establish the new continuity, the new lore, establish Venus, and the personalities of the turtles and Splinter himself, as well as the Dragon Lord, his sidekick Wick, and everything there, presenting the Dragon Lord as a, at the time, at the beginning of the within coming off of the context of the 5-parter, presenting him as a legitimate threat. Unchain My Heart, same thing. Bambi is introduced with her two minions with a clear goal and objective to get her heart back, as well as to destroy the shinobi, which would be Venus in that case. and you have major opportunities there to have Leonardo have character growth and wanting to counteract Bone Steel's hunting talents by learning about the traits of a hunter. You have Venus going through growth, uh, realizing where her true strength as a shinobi lies. She's not a great conjurer, but she has innate telepathic and empathic abilities. So and again, Van Mee's story arc there, the character was introduced, and then having to becoming more and more desperate as they run out of time, making a legitimate desperate act to teleport to where her heart was, leading to her own demise. So they managed, again, those were the episode where the show shined the brightest in terms of character moments, and this having a things build and having a proper payoff. There are a couple of individual episodes that do that. Turtles Night Out, having everything revolving around the turtles actually throwing a midnight rave where everybody comes dressed as animals so they can mingle with humans while raising money for endangered animals. It's a tightly knit story that actually introduces has a couple of elements. You have Bone Steel making another attempt at backing the turtles, infiltrating the rave. You have this this clockwork orange dude with a derby trying to muscle in. He's a one shot villain, so I didn't even bother to learn his name. Uh, Also interfering like with his goons, trying to muscle in, take the money and the proceeds and everything because it was the rave was happening on his turf. So again, a couple of tightly knit stories there. That's one of them. The other one, Going Ape. Funny enough, it's another episode that focuses a lot on Bone Steel. This time, encountering Raphael, chasing him, successfully capturing him, and then dealing with uh, an escape date and a rank. So it becomes like a massive uh, un- unnatural allies, Raphael and Bone Steel teaming up to to an extent, dealing with an escape ape, dealing with the rank, and a madcap dash all throughout an abandoned, surprisingly well furnished house. It While there's a B plot of Leonardo being very frustrated that Raphael apparently blew him off and is clearly having fun doing something without him, not knowing what Raphael is really getting up to, where Raph is in essentially a fight for his life, um, and having to rely on Bone Steel as backup. And I'm putting this emphasis. And it's kind of funny that two of that Bone Steel is heavily featured in both Unchain My Heart and the two episodes that I mentioned. Uh, as like strong individual episodes is because that character is one of the best things to come out of this series. I don't think it's been revised in any other form of Ninja Turtles media. But Bone Steel, who was portrayed by Scott McNeil, who is best known as a voice actor, was extremely charismatic. It was presented consistently as an extremely competent hunter. Unlike a lot of villains in Saban produced shows, specifically in Power Rangers, in the numerous forms during the initial Power Rangers run, and especially when they got the show back from Disney for the Neo Saban era, a lot of the villains were not often given opportunities to come across as competent. You maybe will have like a general type character like Goldar in the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger era, or Scorpina. Uh, those two immediately come to mind. Ecliptor and Power Rangers in Space instantly comes to mind in that regard. That they are presented as a very strong threat, and that they can be a reoccurring menace to the protagonist. Now, Ninja Turtles very different, where you would have the turtles interacting with a bunch of different villains and to keep things fresh without having to go to the well too often. Um, Bone Steel was a consistently evergreen character because he would always be coming up with different tactics, different approaches that they made strong point to indicate like this how good he is. That he was able one on one, he was able to capture Raphael in the episode Going Ape, but it took like extreme circumstances, such as like an escaped ape and the rank interfering in his glory being able to turn Raphael's shell into an oversized ashtray for but there were numerous times where he was able to net the turtles. Uh, Actually, in Unchain My Heart, he was able to drop a cage on. He was able to get Donatello in a hanging foot trap. Drop a wooden cage on Raphael. I believe drop a net on Michelangelo and Venus. They couldn't get out of, and also dropped a normal cage of sorts on Leonardo. I believe those were these two cages in that. Oddly enough, he was able, for at least an instance, be able to capture all 5 turtles, and it took like an invention that Donatello had with him at the time to allow them to escape. He nearly caught them again in that same episode with, but the interference from Van Mee and her minions in pursuit of their heart led to like the turtles escaping when the vampires fell into the pit. That Leonardo, again, going back to character progression, Leonardo knew what Bone Steel was doing because he read up on hunter tactics and had an idea of what to do to escape that situation. You can go back and watch the podcast length or the videos covering a lot of these for more of my genuine reaction to a lot of this stuff. But Bone Steel again was a great character. As we also transition to another strong character that was a reoccurring villain, Silver, the gangster gorilla, another one from the Himalayas, I believe he says was. He has minions who are dressed in zoot suits, and they're all human, so it's like they had no problem with taking orders from a talking silver gorilla. Because hey, their ambitions were all the same thing: to get moolah, to get jewels, to get cash, and all that jazz. Silver was ahead of the time. Was a very interesting villain. He wasn't really he wasn't particularly hands on. He had his minions for that, but he would go out with his minions, to conduct the heist and everything. So he was active, but it's not like an active combatant. It's like, you think he's going to ruin his suit? Nah, come on. But one of the more interesting episodes, and one that really should have been led into a two-parter, I forget the name of it, but it was where Silver uses a computer to hypnotize Donatello in conducting heist for him, using the code word banana. Which Raphael later picks on when Donatello's constantly sneaking out, constantly being tired. But that's an episode that should have been at least a two-parter, because it ends in such a very ambiguous way with Donatello and Raphael running out of Silver's lair. But it was a but it seemed like Silver's minions were going to go after them and chase them and maybe capture them. That there was something there, because we don't really see Donatello deprogrammed there. So there was nothing essentially to stop Silver from reusing that to have Donatello continue to conduct to do crimes for him. But beyond that, the initial thing where there was a Silver was introduced, breaking into a bank or something to get some gold. Well, and another episode also had kind of like a weird ending where Venus is trapped in a vault where there's going to be an explosion. Donatello has to get him out, and we don't really see how they get out of that. So two of Silver's episodes kind of have like weird ish endings. But he also appeared in a couple of other episodes. The lottery ticket episode, yeah, you can kind of mediocre. Moving on, another villain that was introduced, several appearances, was reoccurring, was Dr. Queez, a scientist that Donatello admired. They actually had great chemistry when in their first Dr. Queez's introductory episode. He comes back for where he actually is able to clone the turtles, and we actually got to see like 10 turtle costumes on screen at the same time. Granted, only 9 were active, as the what was it? The Donatello one was already shoved into a trash can in that episode's climax. But Dr. Queez was presented as an actual genius. A lot of his things work. He's not a tactician, but he could get things done from a scientific level. He's certainly a great proxy for the likes of Baxter Stockman. Probably even more so because Baxter, like if I go back to thinking back to the '87 series in particular, Baxter was kind of written off in the second season where he was turned into a fly after numerous failures and setbacks. But Dr. Queez is like has some great makeup and like great prosthetics. Uh, I never found out who the actor was that played him, but they did a very memorable job. Uh, so it was like no complaints there. Um, then there's the Dragon Lord and the Rank and Wick. The Dragon Lord was initially presented as a Lord Zed type threat. That, if going head to head with the Turtles, he was going to be a dominating force. So it would be very rare that you would see him in action against the Turtles and you would see him uh, flounder or lose. At least in a fight. That's how the Dragon Lord is initially presented. They do a the writers do him a great disservice by quickly having him become a foil for some slapstick. One of the things was that a rug almost being tugged out from his carpet being tugged out of him and falling on his back. And then you have the episode where Wick gains incredible powers and usurps him as the leader. Um, so they kind of went out of their way to make Dragon Lord look weak. And then you had numerous times he had like moments where he was borderline on like Rita Repulsa levels of like a foolery, such as the episode where Wick is a fan of Michelangelo's pirate radio show. Um, much to the Dragon Lord's annoyance, and then but you have an entire there's an entire like scene where Wick is like actually no, there are two scenes where Wick is one is he's unintentionally insulting the Dragon Lord, and one where he is at least as part of a ploy to get to trap Michelangelo. But yeah, the Dragon Lord. If I have to rank the villains, like the recurring villains, and actually before we do that, let's talk Van Mee. Again, a very sympathetic character because her minions awoke in her without having her heart on hand, forcing her into a time limit in a desperate situation where she essentially is having to leading her to do an unwise and very desperate act in an attempt to save herself. She certainly can as the only female villain in the show, she certainly came across as very more sympathetic than not. There is so like I could have seen like somehow, some way they could have brought Van Mee back if there was a season two. Not sure how they would have pulled that off. Maybe with like the act of submarine the first one, the original the first vampire spirit or whatever, whatever give like whatever they did to her, the teleporter to New York to the turtle to the sewers allowed her to like maybe to reconstitute herself. Who knows? But so with that said, ranking the villains, Bone Steel's number one. Dr. Queez I'll put as number two. Then Van Me. No, wait. Let me rethink this again. Bone Steel one, Van Me two, Dr. Queez three, Silver four, and then the Dragon Lord, who has the most appearances, or like who should have had like the most importance as a villain, an antagonist, becomes the least interested, the least important. I would mention Shredder in that category, but Shredder is again written off in one episode and makes an appearance later in the series, for where he is essentially a bum and was kind of reintroduced to be a threat, but we don't know how that would have played out because again, only one episode showed that. Plus, the Shredder in this version of of Ninja Turtles had some weird teeth, put it mildly. Moving on, let's talk about the turtles themselves. Venus, without question, is the most likable of the turtles. She was created for the show, introduced, and with how I watched the show in the order of with the order of the episodes as presented on the DVD set, it's essentially her journey where she begins where she loses her family, and by the end of the series, she considers the turtles, Leo, Mikey, Raph, and Donatello to be her family. Which is like at the scene in the part four at the very end of Unchain My Heart part four, uh, specifically. So that's kind of a big deal, like her arc, because between when she is introduced in that scene, there are numerous times where she is butting heads or with the other turtles, Donatello in particular, Raph to an extent, uh, tolerating Michelangelo's ineptitude and Leonardo's like, who should have been the most understanding, respectful, but Leonardo's like kind of wishy-washy attitude towards her. So there's a lot of scenes like that over the course of the series. We see her learning about the sports and picking up on the lingo and dialogue. So in the order of the complete series DVDs, watching in that specific order, the order that I did, you kind of see Venus's entire journey, like from like start to finish. The other four turtles, on the other hand, are not exactly an endearing bunch. Leonardo and Raphael bicker almost constantly. And I say almost constantly because there are times where they're actually getting along, but there are a lot of instances when they're butting heads. Yes, I know this is something that was key in the probably in the comics and certainly in the first two live action Ninja Turtle films, where Leo and Raphael are banging heads, often with Raphael being the one that storms out, which is actually, you know, happens. Raphael storming out is kind of like a thing in this series. Donatello, for someone who does machines and is supposed to be a technological genius, there are times where he is a complete idiot. Um, his passion for technology makes him an interesting foil for Venus, who is more into spiritualism and mysticism because of her shinobi background. So they're like almost oil and water several at several instances. And Donatello doesn't come across well at all. Like he comes across as more of a know-it-all. And then you have Michelangelo, who, if you ever seen the Death Battle of the Ninja Turtle, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there was something in there that indicated that Michelangelo was dropped on his head at some point in time. That most certainly applies to this series version of Michelangelo in regards to a lot of the stuff that the character says, his general attitude most of the time while in the lair, as well as his very strange eating habits. Yes, the strange eating habits was certainly a thing of the 87 cartoon, but in this series it is went way off the chart with it. It didn't really make him a fun character, or indeed, it's like they took everything that was charming about Michelangelo, the way most people have seen the character from the 87 cartoon, and like stripped away like the charm and the coolness and just turned him into a it turned him into a douchebag. To put it simply, there. There's Michelangelo has like one. The entire thing is, since it is his plan to for the rave to raise the money for the endangered animals and Turtles Night Out. It's his plan. It's his idea. So that's like his one truly bright moment of the show. There are times where he comes across as greedy and self-serving, and it's not a particularly good version of Michelangelo. I would say as much about Leonardo, but again, his big character trait is kind of like a wishy-washy attitude towards Venus. He does show to be a bit proactive and wanting to improve, which is a trait we often associate with Leonardo in other forms of Ninja Turtles media. But we don't really see that outside of the hunters aspect, that wanting to like being able to counteract Bone Steel, which again serves as important plot points for in the Unchained My Heart four-parter. But again, Leonardo just exists. Then we got Splinter. I don't like I my initial reaction to actually paying attention to how the Splinter costume looked. I hate it. But I also have to take into account one thing, and it's the only truly live action Splinter like costume scene. In the three live action movies, it was more of a puppet than anything else. In this series, it was a full suit, much like the other turtle suits. The turtle suits were well, like the Dragon Lord costume was, as well as Silver's. So it was fully functional and had to move around. It wasn't limited to just appearing in the window of the subway car in the turtle lair, or being like shot like from just like the chest up. No, it you we would see the Splinter walking around. So we have to give kudos there. At time there was a couple of instances where Splinter is a bit of a dick for no apparent reason, and then there are times he actually, he is the wise old man that we would expect him to be. Sorry, I had to take a swig of water. Uh, and not, but the, but not the best version of Splinter I've seen. Certainly not the worst. I'm trying to think anything else that stands out. Oh yes, well I was just talking about it. The suits, for the turtles are, I would dare say, they're probably the best overall suits we have seen for a live action series. Yes, the 1990 movie suits are incredible. but they clearly weren't made for like reoccurring use. Let me put it like that. Same thing to go with the Secret of the Ooze suits and the Turtles 3 suits. They were made for the movie to look good for a finite amount of time for like a big budget motion pictures. And I say big budget, we put that in the quotation marks there because we all know the 90 the first 90 uh the first Ninja Turtles live action movie was basically the most profitable independent film of all time for like 20 to 25 years from when it premiered. The suits in Ninja Turtles The Next Mutation had to be durable. They had to be used clearly for like a lot of filming, a number of action sequences. We know that at least 10 suits were created for sure. The mouths all moved. So like impressive like puppetry animatronics for like the mouth and the facial reactions of the turtles themselves. They had to be so there was a sense of clearly they were made to be durable, the as well as being able to the portray the turtles talking. Had no problems with how the mouths move, and they clearly they did prep work. They looked at what was done in the three live action movies, and it was clearly a natural evolution. So the turtles look great. The suits, I have no, there were no issues with the suits whatsoever, and we would see the same. And we see the suits put side by side with the Quantron suits for Power Rangers in space, we could see that okay, same level of quality, same level of tear, because the Quantron suits had to be used repeatedly for a lot of different fight sequences, not just for like the stock footage from the Sentai footage for Power Rangers in space, but also for scenes where the Rangers were fighting the Quantrons without without morphing. So that level of consistency, that level of quality was very very much appreciated. So Silver Suit was decent. A lot of it was covered with an actual yellow suit, or which whereas he was like a button shirt with suspenders and a tie. So we've seen the silver as two different variants. The Dragon Lord, not so much as being a memorable. Seemed a little bit stiff moving, but again, he was supposed to be seen as a major threat. But we didn't. But he didn't get to be a major threat as much as indicated that he should have been. The rank, the Dragon Lord's minions. There, there's a running joke if you run around if you ever played the Division or Division 2, it was like the trash can ninjas. That kind of applies to the rank. They're like really budget generic ninja suits. One had like a decent feature, was like a bit more of a green covering on the face to give them more like the lead rank minion soldier. One stood out more than the rest, but not exactly the most memorable like minions, especially when I compare them to Silver's crew, which were dressed all in brightly colored zoot suits. So, and they had to do stunts in those suits. So, yeah, so big difference there. Wick was basically a glorified hand puppet. Not even certainly not on par with what we would have seen like from the Jim Henson Creature Shop for like Muppets, but it was, and it's like the fact that Wick was a hand puppet is like clearly there was only going to be so much that could be done with him. It's like There are numerous instances where you can almost see that where the hand is literally in the puppet, and where the puppeteer is either standing behind something. Especially one scene where he is literally thrown against a wall and he's like embedded in the wall. You can almost see the hand of the puppeteer, the puppeteer behind said wall. The Dr. Queez, we talked about like amazing prosthetics. Bone Steel, certainly no prosthetics, but great teasing of the hair, like wig, overall costume is, and Van Mee certainly was absolutely gorgeous. In terms of how she looked with her costume and like the silky black hair. Uh, so production wise, in terms of like designs and the suits and visually, there's a lot there. Um, I touched on it a lot. The cartoony sound effects really undermine the show a lot, and it really ruins a lot of scenes. A lot was when there is a bit more of like something serious being discussed, or serious at least within the context of the show. That uh, many scenes were ruined because of the cartoony sound effects, and not just fighting scenes. Because as we saw with the Power Rangers in Space crossovers, or crossover episodes, Shell Shocked, if they did not have any of the cartoony sound effects in any of the fight scenes in the Next Mutation series, it would have done a lot to elevate the show. Like we're okay, like the fights are a little bit or more serious and stuff. There's like okay, we have the cartoony stuff at the layer, sound effects there, but when it comes to the fights, they're actual, fights. It's like you treat them with a little bit more respect. They give them a little bit more oomph because there was some very impressive choreography in the show. I there was a decent stunt work, some nice exchanges of kicks, flips, throws, punches, some very creative use of props. It's just a shame that so many scenes were undermined by the cartoony sound effects. This is, and I could also make a complaint towards the speeding up of footage. Depending on the context of the scene in question, if a scene is intentionally going to be more slapsticky, and I'm going to refer again to the episode Going Ape, which is definitely more the most slapsticky episode of the series, but everything makes sense within that context where they use a lot of speed up footage to give like that almost like Benny Hill vibe at times. That works in that context. But when you have like a scene in I forget the big turtle versus turtle clones brawl, and you got cartoony sound effects there, where something okay, give a little bit more substance there, or the scene, the fight scene where okay, you got the turtles versus the Dragon Lord and the Rank, and Oroko Saki, the Shredder, is also in said fight, in semi involved. So it's but the silliness undermine and it clearly was a production. Someone made the decision to undercut the violence of Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation to make it seem as cartoony as possible, and it did the show a major league disservice. A lot of stunt work, a lot of the choreography, the work that was put in by the stunt performers. Uh, there it was sabotaged simply. And that was either a directive from Fox Kids, or somebody at Saban Entertainment. Somebody made that edict, and it's really stupid, especially since the DVD set does contain the two Power Ranger crossover episodes. Well, I say two was like one episode, Save Our Ship, the turtles are only in there for like maybe 60 seconds, as I said when I watched that episode. Uh, but when you contrast Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation with Power Rangers in Space, and hell, this Power Rangers Turbo too, because if memory serves me right, Turbo would have been wrapping up around the same. So, because the first block of Ninja Turtles and Next Mutation episodes would have aired with the back end of Power Rangers Turbo, and the second block of Next Mutation episodes aired with like the opening of Power Rangers in Space. You compare them to the other two Prime Sub-On shows that was also airing on Fox, you can definitely see that there was something off. For the two Power Ranger shows, oh no, they were allowed to like treat things seriously at times, and put some like weight to the stuff. Like the fights were treated like, okay, these, the combat was treated with like some respect. There was some peril, like but because of what? It wasn't because it was like, oh, it's Ninja Turtles and people just remember the cartoon and the more sillier movies. Yeah, did we forget the 1990 film had like was closer to the original comics than anything else. So I would love to know what that that history is, like those decisions were. Um so so with that said, I think we'll wrap that up here. I I did enjoy watching the show. I did enjoy it watching from start to finish in the order that's presented on the DVDs. I'm not a fan of there being two clip shows, but the second clip show, Who Needs Her, does at least have the purpose of where the other four turtles come around to accepting Venus as one of their own, despite bashing her for the majority of the episode. um, but yeah, it was a fun watch. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a second like series going forward because we got Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and one thing I discovered is like doing two shows a week takes a lot of time and effort uh to like sit down and like almost talk for an hour with reaction to whatever the hell it is I'm viewing at a time. There's a lot there because as you can tell I don't shut up. Anyway, I will say this in closing. If you have not seen Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation, give it a chance. You can find the episodes on YouTube. The DVD set is out there. But keep in mind, there's the complete series set, and there's also two volumes. Uh, excuse me. There's also two individual volumes, and the complete set has the order that was presented on the two individual volumes. So there was a volume one and there's a volume two. Volume one has East Meets West as the opening four-parter, and while Unchained My Heart is actually like the episodes uh 21, 22, no 20, excuse me, 22, 23, 24, and 25. With the only episode with Who Needs Her, you know, as episode 26. So then you can sort things out there. Anyway, just be warned that the DVDs don't have the episodes in broadcast order. But I do recommend watching the show. Give it a show a chance. And I don't know if you might like it. Hell, if you watched the show back in the 90s and like just wrote it off, uh, again, give it another shot. I certainly found a lot to enjoy about it. Anyway, we'll wrap that up here. Tonight over on the Twitch channel, we are playing Tom Clancy's The Division 2. We'll be wrapping up the Battle of Brooklyn. As I say tonight, this is referring to Wednesday, October 15th. October 16th, we're going to be starting up the Nonary games with Zero Escape. Nine persons, nine doors, nine. I forgot the rest of that. It's a visual novel. We've played it before on Steam. We're going to play the Xbox version with a controller, so it's going to be interesting to see how like that game translates to using a controller. And also, we're going to be playing starting on October the 17th, Friday, October 17th. Persona 5 Vanilla will be sort of be featured. So yes, we're going to play yet another Persona game this year. I have played Persona 5 Royale twice, but I've never played the vanilla version of Persona 5. So we'll be starting that on Friday. So those are our big stuff there over on the Twitch channel. So tighten your friendship bracelets, stay safe, have a great day. We'll see you next time.